Welcome to a very special Sunday episode of Epic Understanding. As you know, family, we go over many topics here, and anything that is affecting us, anything we'll talk about at the water cooler, at work, we're talking about here live on Epic Understanding. And I had the amazing privilege to connect with a beautiful young lady that had something on her mind that she was very concerned with. And so I am just going to bring her up and have her introduce herself. I think everybody came up, but I'm going to have Kayla actually give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about what's going on. Why are we here, Kayla?
Well, I have been privileged to participate in the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute of Advocacy and Social Action, and through my participation in that program, I discovered the world of CRT, the importance of teaching history, teaching truth, and recently a battle has come up from the right, essentially attacking teaching truth, teaching history, and the entirety of American and African American history in public classrooms. So that fault has been brought to North Carolina, and this weekend is the Zim Project's call to action weekend to pledge to teach the truth. So that's why we're here today.
That's amazing. And who is it that you brought here with you, Kayla? Kayla? I think she might be just a little bit
Um,
frozen. Wait, Kayla? Are you with us?
can you hear me?
I can. Okay, great.
Yes,
And
can
who
you
is
hear
it that
me?
you brought? Yes, yes, dear. Who is it that you brought with us today
Okay.
or with you today?
Um, through, okay. So through the African American Policy Forum's CRT meetings, I was able to get in contact with Miss Kanita. She is a just so passionate about this and really brings a wealth of knowledge to the conversation. And Miss Angelicia, who is the director of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, and who I'm so privileged to uh, work under and for to be her mentee. So
All right. Okay, so I am going to highlight Miss Angelicia, and you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, so I am the founder of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute of Advocacy and Social Action. And interestingly enough, I came across the statistics probably in about 2014 from Kimberle Crenshaw about Black girls being pushed out and over policed. And so I wanted to know, because the statistics showed that it was like up north, but I wanted to know if it was happening down south. And so I ran and looked at the statistics in Wake County, Durham County, Lenore County, and was just shocked that Black girls are suspended at is just the high rate as Black boys, but no one is talking about it. So I wanted to use this institute to create a rite of passage program. And from that, I've stayed in contact with Kimberle Crenshaw, and most of the summers when she started the CRT program, I said I wanted to be in that summer school. So even when she did it online, I was there. This year, I'm starting school in the fall, so I was in orientation, so I couldn't. So I called on my little girl, Kayla, who is passionate about everything, and she attended all days. And we want to create CRT educators because we're a youth-led organization, and we want to use our young people to push this or push back on this movement in North Carolina, especially that's coming out against CRT.
Wow. Now, I like that overview, but I must tell you, family, go get your pen and paper.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yes, go get your pen and paper because Miss Kadita is going to take you deep. Okay. Unpack this for us. She's a librarian. She She has it behind her name. So she is going to tell you some primary source information. She's going to break it down for you. And so she's going to give you some resources as well. And this is just in her introduction, family. So pay close attention. Here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel extremely blessed and honored to be here. I am so thrilled to have met such a young, passionate, resourceful individual in Kayla. Just amazed by her advocacy and action and ability to bring all us old folks together who can barely use computers. So I want to shout out Kayla, first of all, and just thank her for bringing us all here. Second of all, we actually have in North Carolina a very serious movement against critical race theory that is being led by our lieutenant governor. And I don't want to get into a debate about that. What I want to do is go to the primary source material. That's what I want to do. And the first person that I want, and the first thing I want to consult around what is critical race theory, I want to use Professor Crenshaw's words as she defines it as to what it is, okay? And I'm going to tell you what she says. Professor Kimberle Crenshaw says, and I quote, critical race theory is a practice, a way of seeing how the fiction of race has been transformed into concrete racial inequities. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from the past are detached from it. Now, I don't know if everyone has ever heard of this, but I don't know, but I'm going to throw this out to you. It's a Dinkra symbol called the Sankofa. And it's the symbol of a bird with flying forward with its head going back with a little seed in its mouth. And the Sankofa signifies going back and getting it, right? You got to go back and get it. You have to know where you come from in order to know where you're going. And that's what critical race theory is about. Critical race theory is not about making individuals feel guilty. It's not about accusing individuals of being racist. What critical race theory does is causes us to think about how our laws were created, and then how policies were created, how institutions were formed, and how, because we were formed as a racial hierarchy. All you gotta do is read the Constitution in its original form, and it does not include the enslaved, and it does not include the indigenous First Nation people. And it's in writing. It's a primary source document. I'm here to tell the teachers it's okay to go get those primary source documents. I grew up in North Carolina. I'm a 7th generation North Carolinian. And when I took civics in high school, we never read the Constitution. So I just think if we want to understand what critical race theory is, first we need to see what the people who wrote it actually said and turn off Fox News.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask you a question since you mentioned Fox News. Do you think MSNBC gets it right?
I don't, honestly, to be perfectly honest, I don't watch a whole lot of news. I have cable, but usually I watch for the Weather Channel. And shout out to all the folks dealing with, is it Ida coming through the Gulf?
Mm-hmm.
So I just send a prayer up for those folks.
Absolutely. My thought is be careful of anybody telling you what to think.
I think it's really, for me, you just need to read who wrote it and make your own opinion.
Right. Let us make our own opinions. And I like the fact that you sent us to primary source documents. Get it from the horse's mouth. That is most important. I don't want it to be about politics. I want it to be about actual facts and information. So would you like me to play the video that you sent?
Absolutely. That's what you're about to see is a clip from Professor Williams Crenshaw about how she further defines critical race theory.
Excellent. Here we go.
What's up, family? Did you know Critical Race Theory Summer School is starting next Tuesday, August 10th? You applied, right? What? Well, you must not know what's going on next week, so let me fill you in right now. We've got the OGs from the movement like Devin Carbato, Sumi Cho, Gary Peller, Rob Williams, Cheryl Harris, Gloria, Lansing Billings. We've also got leading thinkers from across the academy like Luke Harris, Danny Hosang, Kate Mann, and David Blight. We've also got social justice superstars like Barbara Arnwine, Eric Ward, and Viet Thanh Nguyen. The list goes on and on. But look, summer school isn't just for academics and activists. It's for everybody. Everyone who wants to talk back against the censorship of anti-racist education. It's for everyone who wants to know the truth, to teach the truth, and to spread the truth. To apply, follow the link below, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. I will put a copy of that into the chat just in case anybody is interested in getting to know more about her programs. It seems like, does she have that every year?
It's my understanding they didn't have it last year because of COVID. They did have it?
They did. It was on Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know they had it last year, but I went this year, and I think Kayla went this year as well. So, yeah.
So question, is critical race theory, no, better yet, how is it different than Black history? How is that different?
So let me just jump in here. I had my third year in law school, I took Race, Racism, and Law, and the author of that book was Derrick Bell. And Derrick Bell is known as the godfather of critical race theory, because his book takes you back to all of from the first civil rights legislation, starting at Plessy v. Ferguson, Dred Scott, and walking it all the way up to how the impact of that legal system has impacted Black people in America. So it's not necessarily just Black history, like, oh, Harriet Tubman freed this many slaves and she could have freed more, as they know. It is about how systemic racism was created from that Constitution, as our sister librarian said, from that Constitution, which birthed case laws like Dred v. Scott and Plessy v. Ferguson, and then Brown v. Board, and just kept going on and on. So that's kind of the difference between the critical race and Black history.
So do me a favor. You know what? I like people to break things down so that we can fully, just kind of get a grasp on it. And that was beautiful. What I'm looking for is, if everybody thinks they know about Martin Luther King, everybody thinks they know about him, right? But if we were to break down how Martin Luther King is taught in school currently versus how Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy actually was compared to critical race theory, what might be some differences that we would notice?
So as, is it Angelicia? I want to say it right. Angelicia. As Angelicia said, the creation of critical race theory is in U.S. jurisprudence, meaning that it is founded in the legal structure of the United States, and it examines how racism is embedded in our legal structure. Okay, that is the foundation of critical race theory. Okay, as it has grown, it has become, according to Professor Crenshaw, it's not just, she describes it as not just being a noun, it's a verb, it's an action. Okay. What we're taught as educators in library school is that the classroom is objective and neutral, right? That's what we're told it's supposed to be. But the question for me, as I was going through grad school, well, what is objectivity and what is neutrality? What you get when you hear about MLK and his I Have a Dream speech, which actually the real title was The Blank Check, right? It was really about economic justice, right? And that's what we don't learn. We don't learn that when MLK was assassinated, he was very much maligned and one of the most hated people in the United States because he was speaking against the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we don't learn is that he was, killed, assassinated when he was in Memphis doing what? Advocating for what? Economic justice. Sanitation workers.
For what kind of workers?
Sanitation, the garbage
Sanitation
men,
workers.
the
Mm-hmm.
garbage
Mm-hmm.
men, the people who pick up our trash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself, do those people in your community have justice today? Are those folks in your community making living wages? Do those people have to work more than one job in order to feed their families?
Mm-hmm. You want to know what I think? First of all, I do not know a lot about critical race theory. I just don't. But I will say this: this might fall under critical race theory, or it might just fall under critical thinking. This, this is what I learned when in at school and in church and things of that nature. What I got taught as a young person about Dr. Martin Luther King was a feeling.
Mm.
It was a feeling, and that he was an honorable man. It's kind of the thing that you get taught about Jesus a little
Mm.
bit. You know, it almost, how when you're little, they talk about Jesus and Santa Claus as it's almost they're the same kind of thing in person. He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he's watching over you. But there are some very critical differences there. In the same way, they made Martin Luther King a very mythical figure and gave me some nice words that he was saying. What I was able to ascertain is that what he was really doing was fighting for equity, and not just based off of the color of your skin, not based off the content of your character, even though that's really great. He was fighting for it based off of your humanity, and the fact that you exist gave you value and merit. And he was acknowledging, as a matter of fact, he was highlighting and pointing out that our justice system was casually, but intentionally working against the poor, casually but intentionally working against people who had a certain color skin, casually but intentionally working against people who worked in certain job titles or fields. And so that's how our system is made. And the reason why I say casually, because it's not supposed to be a big deal. What do you mean? What do you mean there's a problem? Why are you so upset? And so I just find that to be critical thinking. Is that critical racism? Tell me. I have a researcher in the audience. I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tall Dark. I appreciate you. Please look up anything that you think is relevant. I would really appreciate that. Um, so, girls, tell me, what was your first introduction to critical race theory?
Again, mine was my class in law school, Race, Racism, and the Law. And, then that was like, 96. And it wasn't called critical race theory then.
What was it called?
It was just Race, Racism, and the Law, and it was Derrick Bell. And so now it's coming out that, that's the exact kind of course that I took when it looked at the systemic criminal justice system of racism. I don't remember hearing that term critical race theory until later on. And I think that Sister Crenshaw had very much a whole lot to do with it. But it wasn't termed that. But Derrick Bell, in his writing, he wrote, of course, he was a Yale law professor who stepped down because they wouldn't hire any Black women. So he left because they wouldn't hire Black women for tenure. And so he left. So he not only talked the talk, but he walked the walk. And so he wrote a book called Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And so he looked at how this systemic racism has created a permanent underclass and what it has done. And so this has been going on since the 90s. And so when you find people who are anti-critical race theory, they are normally the people who, like in seminary, you are taught to take a scripture and look at it through exegesis, which is when you read out of the text. You read the text for what it is. But the anti-critical race theorists are eisegesis because they are trying to bring their own view into it and claim that I'm guilty. I feel guilty. That's not really how it happened. Let's keep that out. And so that's kind of, I did not hear critical race theory until now, like recently now, because it's come under attack.
Right. I didn't hear about critical race theory until 2020 when people were complaining about it. As a matter of fact, I think I heard about it in the pulpit from my pastor, and I was like, what is he talking about? So I can honestly say my pastor preaches against critical race theory, and how he defines it is not what you said at all. And so for the people who are just joining us, can one of you ladies please repeat what critical race theory actually is? And we are defining it based off of its actual creator. So please share with us that information.
I can share it with you again. This is a direct quote from Kimberle Williams Crenshaw, Professor Crenshaw. She is
the
she created the term critical race theory.
She created it.
She is actually a student of Derrick Bell as well. He taught her at Yale. And in critical race theory summer school, she and some of her classmates who are also there, who also crafted, because critical race theory she created the term, but it came out of the activism of her and her classmates at Yale Law School around Professor Bell leaving. And I just put in our chat, Coach Love, a spreadsheet with some reference documents that I've curated, a reading list. And at one of those is Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Professor Bell. So let me read this quote by Professor Kimberle Williams Crenshaw. And she says, quote, "Critical race theory is a practice, a way of seeing how the fiction of race has been transformed into concrete racial inequities. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from the past are detached from it." Again, I just want to connect that to the concept of Sankofa, the Ghanaian Adinkra symbol that symbolizes going back and getting it. We have to know where we come from in order to know where we're going. And then the second question you had, where did I first hear about critical race theory? Actually, I think the first place I heard it was Cheryl I. Harris's article, Whiteness as Property, which is also in this reading list that I'm giving you, where she talks about whiteness as being a material wealth that is articulated specifically in the United States vis-a-vis our legal system. Okay. I don't know if the term critical race theory is actually in that article, but I was familiar with it after reading Professor Harris. I started reading about Professor Crenshaw, and that's when I eventually came to critical race theory. It was not something, again, it's not a K through 12 pedagogy. It's not. It is not. Right. It is not a curriculum for school-age children. Critical race theory is how grew out of activism of law students and grew into a practice of social activism within the classroom. Now, people may find that threatening because the classroom is supposed to be, like I said earlier, objective and neutral. But we have to ask ourselves, who is defining what objectivity and neutrality actually is?
So I have a point I want to make, and then I have questions that I want to poll the audience with. Audience, I'm going to ask you if you think critical race theory is currently being taught in K through 12, like if it's being taught to our children currently. I just want to know, do you think if it is or if it isn't? And then the other thing I want to ask our panelists here, do you think that it has critical race theory actually also points out the um, gap between the white wealthy and the white poor? Angelicia, your face says you have an answer.
I don't have the answer. I'm just kind of doing my critical analysis here.
Okay.
It can because we understand that the patty rollers are the white poor people who were used during the enslavement of Africans to capture runaway enslaved Africans, were normally the poor white population. And so it can bring out those truths there about why normally poor white people feel that we are the enemy when actually we're like at the same level. So it could help them too if they would realize how they're being used as a pawn in this whole schematic pond here. It really could. So I think it can pull out that fact of that richer white portion
Mm-hmm.
and the not so rich white portion.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's attached to history and it's normally based on legality. Because who was capturing the enslaved Africans, and the enslaved Africans, that was losing money.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
was losing money. And so it's built on that wealth.
Mm-hmm. So you know what? There's a comment out here, and I actually think it is really a good one because it points out there probably no. Why am I saying probably? There should have never been a group of people who were enslaved for generation after generation after generation after generation. That just shouldn't have happened. One of the things that I hear talked about is that people from Africa actually enslaved their own people. Okay. Um, that is looking at it as if Africa, the continent, is just one country.
Right.
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 Africa is a continent, not not one country. So that's one thing. And so they were not enslaving their own people, number one. And number two, they were not doing it for generations. So there's two different kinds of slavery. One is called, is it chattel slave? Researcher, help us out with this. There are two different types of slavery. One is generational and one is for a period in time in your life. Not that either one is right, but
Are
one
you
is
talking
like,
about indentured servitude?
okay, yes, yes, yes.
So indentured servitude is more of a contract type situation. You get out.
Okay.
Chattel slavery, you can't get out.
There you go. That's what I was.
There's no, you can't get out of that.
Is what
Right.
was done in America, and then indentured servitude was more like what was done in Africa. Is that right?
I don't. What this is what
Help
I
me
can
out.
tell you. This is what I can tell you. Our in the United States, indentured servitude is how folks started coming over here who didn't have the money to come here. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is absolutely there were folks from different African nations complicit with the slave trade, specifically on the west coast of Africa. And so there are folks who have done research to go back and see that their familial wealth in Ghana and other countries is actually connected to their ancestors' connection to selling folks who weren't from their communities into chattel slavery. So that's also accurate. Okay. All of that's accurate. None of that's a lie.
Okay.
Truth is stranger than fiction. Okay. But what we also have to understand is that white supremacists aren't just white.
Mm-hmm.
People who try to make people who are greedy don't come in just one color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Well,
people who
don't you think
deny.
the label white supremacy is a bad label? Because we're really not talking about a color of a skin. If you say that, what you're talking about is,
Well, white supremacy is an ideology and a hegemony. Okay, it's a
wait, hold on, back up with that last word. What was that last word?
ideology and a hegemony. Like it's a
Hegemony.
yes.
Can you spell that?
Egemony.
Right.
Put that in the private chat so I can have somebody look it up. I don't know what that word means.
So it means leadership or dominance by a certain group. Okay.
Okay.
So when you're talking about the United States of America, in particular, the group that dominates and leads us are mostly white men. And if you don't believe me, you can read Shirley Chisholm's books and look at her breakdown of how many white men are in the Senate and Congress and see that those numbers haven't changed very much and know that I'm speaking the truth. So this is not a lie. Okay.
So I want you to know the votes are in. I want you to know that the votes are in, that it is not CRT is not being taught K through 12. It is not. Now, family, is that right? Panelists, is that correct?
It is true, because it's not a curriculum for K through 12.
So why are we having arguments at the school board meeting? What is going on?
Well, I'm sorry.
Speak on it.
I wanted to say, it's pretty much the weaponization of a term that, as we've shared previously, that not everyone is familiar with. So if you look at the actual language of the of what's being passed to enforce these CRT bans, they're not necessarily attacking CRT. They're attacking history and limiting what can be said in a classroom as far as what's being taught. So it's not a good. It's not good if you're trying to create a misinformation campaign to come out and say, I want to ban or rewrite history in the classroom. But if you use a term that not many people know, they don't know the definition of, they don't know the workings of that term, then you can weaponize that term and apply it to anything that you want to when you go to, actually put it into law. So really, this is an attack on history, but they needed a term that they could weaponize, and really just redefine which is CRT. So CRT is kind of like the scapegoat term.
Okay.
So just to piggyback on what Taylor's saying is that, critical race theory originated in law schools. It's just over time, professional educators and activists in a host of settings, including K through 12 teachers, diversity, equity, and inclusivity advocates, racial justice and democracy activists, among others, have applied critical race theory, meaning the examination of systems and institutions, right, in order to recognize and eliminate systemic and institutional oppression. Okay. All right. So what happened in 2020 with George Floyd was that, number one, we had to face our history as a nation of wanting to see Black death live and in color. Okay. We go back to Ida B. Wells. She wrote 2-3 books about lynching in the South. I can't even get through one of the books because of the graphic nature of what they were doing to Black bodies in public space. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is what happened to George Floyd on television, live and in person in color, after everybody had been locked up in their house for months, spawned a psychological, social, an emotional reaction in people who didn't really have any like real understanding or didn't have to have any comprehension about what it was. Okay.
So, can you draw a straight line for me?
Mm-hmm.
What does what happened to George Floyd? Can you please connect that to critical race theory specifically?
So what happened was people wanted to understand how this could happen. Why is
Mm-hmm.
this happening? Why is it okay for a police officer to sit on a man for almost 10 minutes and no one do anything? And he died.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when people wanted to understand that, they needed to understand the systems and institutions that allowed that action to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The place
Okay.
you go to understand that, the theoretical, the academic place to
Mm-hmm.
begin to conceptualize that from a legal standpoint is critical race theory.
So, is being locked up, incarcerated, is that connected to slavery in any way?
Definitely. All you have to do is read the 13th Amendment that gives you the loophole.
Can
But
somebody look up the 13th Amendment for us and type it out? That would be great. If you can look that up for us and put it in there so we can highlight it, I'd love to have that. Researcher, please look that up.
it
But
says,
yes, so tell us about it. Go ahead and expand on it because it's going to get looked up.
so it talks about how slavery, except for punishment of a crime,
Okay.
it has that except for punishment of a crime. And if you notice, if you go, Angela Davis has an excellent essay from the from the slavery of prison to the prison of slavery, or something like that. And she breaks it down and talks about as soon as the enslavement of Africans ended, then all kinds of criminal charges started. You started getting vagrancy. So a black man on the street would get charged with vagrancy. And so when
Mm-hmm.
people get charged with vagrancy, it was because there was nowhere to work. Because remember, when slavery ended, then
Mm-hmm.
the South was poor, so the slave owners didn't have money to pay them. So they were going to stay. That's why they went back and started sharecropping. That's how we get sharecropping out of that. But they would stand on like at corners, and they started criminalizing that. Everything began being crime started going up when it came for naming them. So vagrancy
Okay.
happened. And so then that allowed them to put back in prison because
Okay.
no one caught the loophole that said except for punishment of a crime.
Ava DuVernay did an amazing Netflix documentary on the 13th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in our chat, so you can send it out to folks. But 13th is an amazing documentary that breaks it down. You don't have to read, because I tell people to read. I have a professional motto that would not be appropriate in this space to articulate, but reading is fundamental. When you look at our literacy rates in the United States right now, they're abysmal.
Okay.
And this is why we're in the situation that we're in. People don't read anymore because they think they can get everything from television. And then
Mm-hmm.
they get their stuff from Facebook and Instagram.
Mm.
And it's very siloed, the information that you're getting. I don't use any social media on purpose
Okay.
at all. But I know, like, I was going to sign up for Instagram. And then when it had me connected to someone that I didn't think the computer should have known I was connected to, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to do that. But that's just me. I'm just saying, when we are in these realms of social media, we get the kind of information that the algorithm tells us we should receive. Do you
Okay.
understand? And so if you are thinking about, I don't know, critical race theory, or you're thinking about the abolition democracy, you may get a lot of that and not get anything about what's happening with, the other side. But in order to like really have a conversation, we have to understand where each other's coming from. We might not agree, but we do need to know and learn how to have civil conversations.
So, excellent. Basically, the researcher just looked it up and said exactly what you said, what you've already given us. So, I want to connect that to what goes on. What goes on in our regular lives? Because we have things such as the broken window theory, um, or being suspected while walking, those kinds of things. So you're committing a crime by walking in a particular neighborhood that you shouldn't be in,
Or that
because
you're perceived that you shouldn't be in.
oh yeah, that you're perceived that you shouldn't be in, and you have to answer for as if you're a criminal. So you girls are researched. Please tell me what you've been able to find. I'm going to go to Kayla. Kayla.
The research word had me think that we were talking about the chat. I'm sorry. Yeah, so right now we're essentially finding that I believe in 9 states, but 14 states total. There's an interactive map, by the way, in the Google document link that we will be sharing. Legislation has been passed, or by some mechanism, been passed to limit and essentially surveil what goes on in history classrooms. And I just want to kind of piggyback on the whole point of social media. A lot of the anti-CRT power and momentum really came from social media, and how things can spread like fire up there, especially misinformation. So what you have is a lot of people redefining CRT, or essentially using it to say we don't want to be in classrooms where we feel uncomfortable. And if you look at the wording in these legislations, the copycat legislation, you will see if any student feels uncomfortable. So this is about comfort in a false narrative, not about teaching the truth. And this comfort enables people who may benefit from white supremacy to hold their power without it being questioned. The concern with history, with CRT, is the fact that eventually you will get questioned. And I think a lot of this is is a reaction to the multiracial response that we saw to George Floyd's and Breonna Taylor's death last summer. And as a united front is being presented and organized, and we are finally getting closer to a truly multiracial democracy, you have these attacks coming up on voting rights, on CRT, and it's all in an effort to really suppress and allow those in power to feel comfortable and not threatened.
So what we've been able to establish here for sure is that CRT, critical race theory, is not being taught in K through 12. Are any of you aware of any plan for it to be taught K through 12?
I think what's happening in K through 12 is advocacy to have ethnic and cultural pedagogical practices, right? Because people are trying to figure out, I think Dr. Gladson Billings just wrote this book about, I think she calls it cultural pedagogy or something like that. I saw on the reading list that I submitted for this talk today. But basically, it's it's about including and making sure that historical figures from diverse backgrounds are presented so that students can feel connected to what they're learning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't just teach kids about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Bill Clinton, right? And then, you know, give a little blurb about MLK and, oh, Barack Obama was the first black president, but then they're just consistently and constantly inundated with historical facts that one, don't give them the complex collective story, right? It's just one slice of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like we're not taught that our national anthem was a bill that was passed in Congress and Senate in the 1930s. You know, how many of us even know that the the national anthem was something that was voted into being in the 1930s? I mean, that's my grandparents' generation. You know, figuring out why that was. And when we look at the text of our national, slavery is in there.
So for me, I don't I am not interested in people's feelings. So
Mhm.
what I mean by that is that sounds strange, particularly coming from me, but I mean that in this particular context, I history might make you feel bad, it might make you feel good, but history is something that's baked in and it's just factual. So um, I will give you for instance, I think it is important for us to know that you had slaves fighting on the side of the South and you had slaves fighting on the side of the North. I think it is important for us for us to understand that there's a such thing as a slave Bible. I think it's important for us to understand that slaves were forced not to learn to read. I think it's important for us to know that many black men were killed for looking at a white woman. Um, I think
And
all of
pregnant black women were lynched and their bellies cut open too.
yes,
And and the black folks who were enslaved, who were fighting for the Confederacy, were often forced to do so. They didn't have a choice. That's the second
correct.
thing. And then the third
But hold
thing,
on, hold on.
oh, okay,
I wasn't quite
okay,
done.
I'm sorry.
But I think it's important to know that whole towns where black people had created wealth were burned down. I think it's important to know who actually invented certain things where other people are given credit for them. And it's not because of race, it is because I like facts. Let's simply get the facts straight and let the feelings fall where they may.
I agree with you. And I just want to say again, I'm a seventh generation North Carolinian and have been educated my entire life through public schools, including the first public university in this nation. I say
Mhm.
that because I never learned about Wilmington as a coup d'etat or a pogrom. Okay. So what am I
Okay.
saying? What am I saying? I'm saying that in 1898, Wilmington had elected legally blacks and progressive whites into office. Okay. And they were working together during Reconstruction to build and sustain Wilmington, which at that time was an autonomous black city.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened in 1898? Well, the Confederates who lost the war were pissed and they wanted to control the port at North Carolina. So what did they do? They rode out. They accused someone of sexually assaulting a white woman and burned Wilmington to the ground and took all the black people's land, ran the politicians out of town, the ones they didn't kill, and told everybody to either get out or die. Now, when I was in public schools in North Carolina, what was I taught? I was taught it was a race riot.
Okay.
And the white men came and called the race riot. I was not taught about the Fusion Party, which was the uniting of the free blacks and the whites in the Republican Party, who at the time were fighting on the side of the Union. Okay. I wasn't taught about how a governor of North Carolina was impeached because he wanted to reel in the white supremacists and the Klan. I wasn't taught that. I wasn't taught that there was an entire congressional investigation of the KKK that started during Reconstruction. I was not taught any of that. So what I'm trying to say to you, Coach Love, is that, yes, we want the facts. But the point is, what facts are we being taught? And how those facts are being...
I want all of them.
What I'm saying is that, yes, we want all of them. But the way that curriculum is set up is that you're taught it was a riot. You're not taught it was a pogrom and a coup d'etat, and that it set the stage for then Tulsa and other Black autonomous towns to be burned to the ground. Because
let me ask you this. Do you think it is appropriate for K through 12 children to learn that people burned down entire towns because of somebody's race?
What's the truth?
No. That I'm just yes or no. Look, there's no condemnation for me either way. I'm just saying, is it appropriate or not?
I think we have to go to the facts. What I would say, what's in the primary documentation? What's the newspaper say? What's the Black newspaper of the time say? What's the white newspaper of the time say? How are they different? That's how I would teach the class. I would bring out what people were saying at that time and allow my students to make up their own mind.
So you think it's appropriate to, you do, apparently, yes, you do. Yes, is that a yes? Because it sounds like a yes.
I think it's important to center primary source documentation in education. Okay. And whatever those people said, then the children or the students then form their own opinion.
So, Kayla, same question, yes or no?
Well, yes, and to further elaborate on it, I think one of the main concerns with teaching CRT, one of the arguments that really needs to be dismantled, is that by teaching that this happened, this is white hatred, this is reverse racism. When in reality, this great analogy was used by C.J. Hunt. If I turn the lights off in the hotel room and I turn on a black light and I see specks of dirt, right? You can't say to me, you made my room dirty by turning on this light because now I see how dirty my room is, right? Your hotel room was already dirty. I'm just showing you the dirt so that you can clean it up. So the point is never to say a white person did this and you are to blame, a black person did this and you are to blame. The point is this history is still embedded, in our legal system. It's still within our institutions. These racist divides still exist. So the only way we are going to address their current presentation is by understanding where they come from and turning on that black light. So the black light doesn't make racism. I didn't make your room dirty. I just showed you what was already there.
Fantastic. Very good, Kayla. Angelicia?
Okay, so I probably am a little different than everyone else.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about who's teaching it. My parents were very much involved in teaching me the truth. So when I came home singing Dixie, my mother shut me up and sat me down and explained. I don't see where my school system public school system from K through 12 would have taught me that. As a matter of fact, I had an 11th grade U.S. history teacher. When I asked him why we weren't learning Black history, he said, "You're not learning Black history because there is none." I don't trust the public school system teachers to tell the truth. Now, so what does that mean? When people don't have the parents to help teach it, well, then that's where community-based organizations come in. The community-based organizations need to be empowered to help teach this message. Our better organizations should be involved in it. They need to do that as well in their little youth programs where we teach it, because we know the truth. We've lived the truth. We're the lived experiences of the truth. So I'm concerned about who's teaching it. That's the first thing. Who's going to teach this truth?
I think, you make a very good point. And, you make a very good point. And if we're wanting to foster robust, what I call robust intellectual discourse, we have to be able to, as Kayla said, shine the light on the dirt so we can see the dirt, so we can talk about the dirt. It's a lot of fear mongering around here, like, oh, we can't talk about racism. Oh, we can't talk about structural inequality. And there's fear mongering because, as you say, Angelicia, the teachers aren't prepared to have the conversations because they haven't been taught how to have these conversations from an educational point at all. They're teaching children to sing Dixie.
I want to just hit pause because I still have to have a yes or no to my question. Should it be taught in K through 12? Not critical race theory. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, should it be taught about that full-fledged towns were burned down based off of race?
Yes.
So I think, okay, so let me just say
we have to let in Miss Simmons. We have to. Yes.
No, I don't. So I would probably say no, because I don't trust the system. And I know, especially in Wake County, who makes up the public school systems. Who are the number one teachers in the public school system? Just go on and share it. Go on and tell the truth on that. I don't trust them I would not trust them to teach my child anything.
Got it. So
no.
No. So no, because you don't trust the teachers. I got a yes from Kayla because she thinks it's important. I think that was a yes that I got from our librarian.
So what I am saying is, this is what I'm going to say. State bans on teaching about racial injustice include prohibitions that are overbroad, vague, and highly sensitive. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to say is, what are the facts and what are the primary sources to support those facts? So my answer is, it depends.
And what does it depend on? Whether they have those
it depends on if they have the primary sources in order to support what they're teaching, number one. And then number two, if they're able to humble themselves in order to learn something from their students about the process. Because if you are, because most of the teachers in Wake County are white, and if you down there at Enlow, or if you at Southeast Raleigh, at the high school down Southeast Raleigh, or you at Athens Drive, my alma mater, which is now majority brown. It used to not be, but now it is. You're at one of those schools. Are you ready to interface with your students on social justice issues? Or are you going to kick them out of class? You're going to argue with them and get them suspended?
Because now we got one level. Should the next level up, if you are going to be a certified instructor, do you think that those teachers should be taught critical race theory?
Well, not only do I think they need to understand, before they get to critical race, they need to understand critical pedagogy. They need to understand ethnic and gender studies. They need to understand humility and be willing to look at education as a symbiotic process and not a banking process, right? Which is what banking means. You stand at the front and you deposit information and they give it back to you. Okay. All right. So what we need is to understand how our teachers are being trained to interface and educate our students. And this is where parents come in. Okay. And this is why it's important to have the parents and the community organizations to hold the teachers' feet to the fire, to hold these politicians' feet to the fire. Okay. Just like it's people up here talking about, I don't want my child taught critical race theory. Well, we need to have Angelicia out here saying, I don't trust this white teacher to tell my child about Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement under the 1950s and 60s. Because
I want to push.
They didn't tell them the truth about Wilmington.
I'm going to push a pause point. I honestly, I'm going to tell you, it does not have anything to do with a person's skin color. And I'm going to point this out to you because what brought you guys all together? Kayla, what color was the man's skin that wrote that document that got you so fired up in the first place?
Oh, it was a little dark, I will say. It was
he was a brown person. It's whether or not somebody understands the importance of the information. It's the lieutenant governor of North Carolina, correct?
Yes.
He's a black man, correct?
Correct. He's appearing black. Okay, so he's appearing black.
I mean, no, his skin color is black. What I am saying, I am very, very much trying to take it away from, or no, I personally want to invalidate anything that has to do with anybody's skin color because you guys know this, race is a social construct. It is not biological. Okay. So if I say that somebody can't teach something because they're white, that is just wrong. That is non-factual.
That's not what I said. I said Angelicia says she don't trust them because so where's her trust? Where does that trust issue come from? Especially as someone who grew up in the public system in North Carolina.
What I'm trying to pull it away from, what I'm saying is that idea, not trusting somebody because of their skin color is not good. That is not good. What we can do is take a look at what people are actually doing and how they are actually behaving. And then
that's what I'm looking at. Because when I look at the high suspension rates of our kids, and I know who's doing that, then I'm saying that I have to push back and interrogate whether or not you can really teach that. If you're so quick to put my child out quick, especially when it's the same infraction of a child that's a different color. So while I would love to come to the table and say, I don't want to make it about race, that very much is when it comes to suspending my child.
I think we also we can't disconnect education and race. We can't. We cannot. Because and this is why I'm going to say this. When you look at the fact that 2% of tenured professors in this nation are Black women.
Okay.
That's a problem. That's a problem. And that's an issue. When you have the people who are at the higher education level who look like me being denied tenure. I mean, look at what happened to Nicole Hannah-Jones at UNC. We can't separate these things. And it's really important. And I'm not saying don't trust a white teacher because they're white. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to, when a parent is saying to us, I'm concerned that this person is going to suspend my child for talking back because they're speaking their truth about what they know about history. And then that teacher can exercise their power and put that child out that class and get that child suspended. That's a problem.
So, yes, what I'm saying is we have to create boundaries. It is very important that we don't take things too far, because if we say that, no, let me just put this out there. I know some teachers who these are Black school districts, okay, with Black teachers, and they put children out of the class for the very same reasons that you are referring to, and they're Black. It has nothing to do with their skin color. It has to do with a mindset. It has to do with a mindset, period, about who deserves what and what behaviors get acknowledged with positivity and what behaviors don't get acknowledged with positivity. I'm going to give you an example, and it may not be the very best one to have, but Jamie Foxx, I would say that he is an unusually talented. Okay, he can sing. He can entertain us with his comedy. We all know that comedians have a high degree of intelligence. Okay, he is a person that desires attention, and he thrives off of it. Instead of punishing him for his behavior, his teacher focused his behavior, and they said to him, if you do X, Y, and Z, then I will allow you X number of time to perform on Friday. So this teacher ultimately kept Jamie Foxx focused during the week because he had something to look forward to on Friday. Now, am I saying that every little brown child is given that that attention to their particular needs? No, I am not saying that. I readily acknowledge that little brown children are suspended, both male and female, at a much higher rate. And I would love for somebody to go ahead and look that up so I could put those numbers on the screen. Kanita, do you happen to have the exact numbers, or any of you guys? Does anybody have the exact numbers? Because I am aware of those facts. But what I'm saying is we have to focus on the facts. We have to focus on outcomes. We cannot just say, because of somebody's skin color, they're automatically going to make a particular decision, because we lose the viability of our statements when we do that.
So this is what I'm going to tell you. I'm a librarian,
Mm-hmm.
and 85% of the folks in my profession are white.
Yes.
Okay. I think those numbers are similar in education. There may be about 10 points of a difference. Okay.
Okay.
When you have an overwhelming homogenous demographic over something public like information dissemination. I'm specifically speaking from a librarian point of view right now. I'm not addressing I'm not a teacher, I'm a librarian. So
Okay.
when 85% of my profession identifies as white, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And as I told you earlier, my first introduction to critical race theory was through the article written by Cheryl I. Harris entitled Whiteness as Property, where there is a material wealth in skin color and identity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at who is in charge and who is doing the teaching and the information dissemination,
Mm-hmm.
and what is being put into our kids, into our students, and what we are learning,
Mm-hmm.
there is an imbalance. There is an imbalance. I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that the book Push Out is about how specifically Black girls in the 20th and 21st century have been criminalized in public schools.
Do me a favor. Can
Yes.
you walk us through this document that you put up here?
Which one?
You can't see that? You don't see
The
that?
Push Out Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that's a book by Monique Morris that looks at how Black girls are criminalized in public schools, and like what the process is, and how it's actually I would say a crisis in public education right now. especially and specifically for gender variant Black girls in school. And so this is very, very important. I mean, they the school to prison pipeline, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about low literacy. We're talking about children being able, not getting what they need from the folks who we trust with them 8 to 10 hours a day, and who are punished because their ways of learning are not addressed.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying is, I'm not going to sit here and say white folks can't teach Black children. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that any person, regardless of their race, who is not dedicated to caring and nurturing the brilliance that the students that come into their classrooms with, if they can't do that, then that student's not going to get what they need, regardless.
Okay.
Teachers have biases.
Now that's true. That's
you
true.
You have Black teachers who have biases.
That's true.
You have white teachers who have biases. You have Asian American teachers. Everybody. I have biases.
Yes, we all have biases.
Okay, we all do.
We all do.
You know, like I'm not. I mean, don't come to me after you just get out the gym and want me to assist you one-on-one, because I'm gonna feel some kind of way about that. That's right. Me. Okay, that's my bias. I don't want to have to smell sweat. I don't like that, but that's my bias. Okay, right. That's something that but if a person is desperate and needs my help, I can't not help them. I might be mad about it, but I still have to do my job. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And so some teachers may some teachers may have biases on other things, but it's the fact that we have to know what those are.
We do have to acknowledge our biases. I think this is a good place for me to interject the idea that some people really do have biases as it relates to weight. Weight is a very common bias, and I only bring that up because just a lot of kids who are overweight have significant problems while they are in school. It has nothing to do with a historical idea. It's just that when you are overweight, it is easy to get shame for just being who you are. And so we were acknowledging those different biases. That one was an important one for me to bring up because, what is done to children who are overweight and the names that they are called, regardless of their skin color. I mean, truly being dragged.
And imagine if you're poor and you don't have nice clothes. I mean,
that's another one.
Biggie Smalls talked about it. Biggie talked about it. He said he sold the alligator on his clothes. You know? You know what I'm saying? Like Biggie talked about it on his rap albums. People. I mean, Roxanne Gay wrote that book, Hunger. I think there's another young man who just came out with a book. I can't think of his name. But yeah, there are a lot of folks who are talking about these things. I mean, there are a lot of biases. It's teachers have biases about, if somebody comes in the classroom smelling like garlic, or, they come from a home where their moms cook their food from where they're from. Some people, I mean, We'll
talk about this another day, but the mischievous part of me wants to talk about the children who come into class smelling like marijuana. But that's a different one.
Well, it depends on the state, because some states that's legal.
Right. Well, no. I still shouldn't smell it. Angelicia brought something up for us to look at. I want to be sure to put our eyes on it. So I just want to thank you, Angelicia. You have two things for us to take a look at. Can you tell us what we're looking at here, Angelicia?
So one of them is an article that mentions and references the whole Georgetown Law School study when it looked at the biases towards Black girls. And they interviewed the majority of white teachers who came out with Black girls didn't need nurturing. They didn't need, they were considered grown even at 5 years old.
Okay.
so all of that came out. This was a 2017 study. I think some of the teachers were Black, but the majority of them were white females because they represent the population of teachers. And so what came out was very disturbing, which really needs to be dealt with, as Sister Librarian said, that teaching of whole critical theory needs to be taught to them, and gender variances need to be taught to them on how to deal, especially, unfortunately, with Black girls. And that really shouldn't be. If you love children, you should love children.
Now, just don't just give us a little bit of what you just said, because Black females being treated, or really honestly, Black people being treated with a lack of innocence. And when I say innocence, I do not mean innocent versus guilty. I mean the childlike innocence that is afforded to somebody who is very young.
Yeah. And Monique Morris even goes into that in Push Out. She talks about that goes all the way back to the enslavement of Africans. The children could not be children. They had to go out there and pick cotton and do the work, even if they were 5 years old. So that's kind of the systemic part of critical race theory, that a lot of these lenses are brought in automatically, that we're just automatically bad, or grown, or fast, or angry. Like, because I'm passionate, somebody who's watching it may say, "Oh, she's the angry Black woman. She sounds angry." And so all of that even came out in that study of how Black women and girls are viewed. And I wonder what that has, and what weight that carries on a little Black girl when she walks in class. And then if I took some of these panelists who are on there, how can you teach me? Because I think that if your lens is that I'm angry, that I'm naturally bad, that I don't need nurturing, then I believe that your lens to teach me CRT may be a little different.
Okay.
Well, you're not going to get taught CRT because it's not K through 12 curriculum. Right. That's the first thing. But what I would say is, what you can do as an educator is go to CRT summer school and interface with what you're dealing with on your inside as to how you're choosing to interact with your students, so that you can have more empathy when you go into that classroom. You know, what I think CRT from an educator perspective can do is help you be open to understanding yourself more, so that you are able to then be open to your students questioning and humbling you, right? Because if you're a white teacher talking about George Floyd, you can best believe, if you have some Black and brown students in there, that they're going to come at you with some stuff you might not be ready to receive, or that you might not completely understand. And instead of being defensive and upset and angry and putting them out, you have to be confident enough within yourself to understand how the systems of institutional and structural oppression have worked in order to create the dynamic that's in the classroom that exists as it is.
So before we finish up with that point, I do want Angelicia to tell us what we are looking at. What is it that we are looking at?
Okay, so this is a study from Georgetown Law School. And as you scroll up, it's probably like a 17-page document. And they asked general questions about the views of Black, like they wanted to know at the preschool point. They said that at the preschool point, that's where teachers begin starting their bias. Black girls are a little too sassy. They asked questions like, does she need nurturing? Then they went to the hypersexualized Black woman. Most of my friends are abstinent, didn't drink, but even still, there was like this assumption that Black girls did, Black women did. And so it goes through all of that. They're asking this panel of questions about Black women and Black girls. And it's interesting, the outcomes, especially on girls, because we don't get to be children. So so when I do something like take out my phone and don't give it up, then that's a bad attitude. Whereas when some other child does the same thing, they are not given the same type of punishment. One of the schools that I work in, Lincoln Middle School in Raleigh, has one of the highest push out rates, 13 to 1. Same infraction, 13 to 1. Ridiculous. So it's almost like that teacher automatically believes that she's talking back. She's sassy. And that again concerns me. That concerns me. And I believe, like Sister Librarian said when she talked about how CRT could help, I believe that this document can check teachers at the door to say, is my lens fogged?
And see, I think that is so foundational what you said. It's not about the color of your skin, it's where is your mind. Where is your mind? Because you can have any color of skin and have those exact same views about the people, the children that you are teaching. But when you bring it to the numbers, now you've made something factual. Now you've made something tangible and put it in a way where we can address it. But if we just make assumptions about people based off of their skin color, we're only creating another problem. We're not fixing another problem. I am really thankful for this document, Angelici. I want everybody to know that I actually put that in the chat. Please go read it. It sounds like an amazing study. It really sounds like an amazing study.
So, Coach,
I know I'm getting
I want
my
to challenge you on one little thing, okay?
Okay. Yes,
This,
yes.
this color aversiveness that's going on about right now, okay? Now, I get this term from the critical disability studies discipline theorists
Mhm.
because they say color blindness is not a good term, and that what we're actually doing is color aversiveness. Okay, and so I put something in the chat for
Where
folks
are
to
we?
look at
Okay.
for color aversiveness. It's a whole article.
Hold on.
It's
I'm gonna
called
copy it.
Not Another All-White Study: Challenging Color Evasiveness Ideology and Disability Scholarship. So this is about disability scholarship, but at the same time, I just want to state that saying regardless of color is like color evasiveness. And we live in the United States of America where color was from day one inscripted into our Constitution. So for
Mhm.
us to say, doesn't matter your color of your skin is a lie, it's not true. And we really have to stop that because it is true and it does matter all the time, every day.
So I want to say what I am saying and what I am not saying. I am not saying color blindness or color aversiveness is healthy. I am saying, as a matter of fact, I am saying that is unhealthy. It matters if you are white. It matters if you are black. It matters if you are Asian because it affects the way you live in this, or what's even available to you, quite honestly, in this society. Um, at the same time, what I am saying is I am not going to jump on a wagon that labels somebody something just because of their color. So, what I'm if just because somebody is white, I'm not going to automatically say you can't teach me about Black history. Quite honestly, like I said, I did not know about critical race theory until 2020. I guarantee you there are some white women who knew about critical race theory prior to 2020. And so I acknowledge that somebody who is white might actually know more about Black color, I mean, a Black culture than me because they've taken the time to invest and study it. So if pretend if I was a parent and I said to some very scholarly, uh, teacher who happened to be white, you cannot teach my child. And here I teach my child about critical race theory, and I'm just learning about it in 2020. That would be ridiculous. This person knows more than me. They've studied it longer than me, and they've invested in it. All I'm asking people to do is invest in it regardless of your color. And I won't make any assumptions about you just because of your color, and don't make any assumptions about me. That said, if we do happen to bump up against an assumption, let us talk about it and then unpack it, because like we said, we all have biases. Not that I've drawn a quiet to the
I mean,
room.
I think
I'm gonna
I mean,
clear my throat.
I think everybody's entitled to their to their opinion. This is a very public forum, so I'm gonna this is what I will tell you. In 7th grade, we learned about World War II. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned that the United States bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
I took issue that uh, with that analysis.
Okay.
I took issue with it because I said, if you're a soldier, you have an expectation to fight and possibly die.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to the store to get some milk for your baby and some Pampers, you are
You
not
don't.
expecting to die
Mm-hmm.
from some foreign nation because
Mm-hmm.
they mad that your army bombed their army.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I got kicked out of class.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't even know about Japanese internment because they didn't teach us that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't teach us about the internment camps. My point is that I hear what you're saying. And as someone who has studied Black history as an undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
and who has gone on to study librarian science and international development,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to be very as
Oh, don't freeze.
we have to be very careful, as Sister Angelicia has already told us, because when people know a lot about your history, that can also be used to continue to hide your history from you. And so I encourage people, regardless of their race and regardless of where they come from, know who your people are, know where you come from, and go get your primary source documents and make up your own mind. If you got a white teacher coming to you talking to you about critical race theory, say thank you and go look it up. And if you need some help, email me.
Well,
Okay?
you want to know what? Hold on. I'm glad you're talking about people emailing you, because somebody is looking for a PowerPoint out there. Who's putting the PowerPoint? Who's making the PowerPoint so I can add it? Yeah.
Well, what we actually have is a resource list. That's what I've been looking down and around.
Mm-hmm.
So this resource list is active. It's a Google document, so we will actively be adding all the links that we can
Mm-hmm.
to this. It has information on not just what we're discussing now, as far as historical, the facts and
Mm-hmm.
information, but it also has information on organizations that are combating against anti-CRT legislation. It has the pledge that you can take. Is the 1 second? I'm sorry. The pledge to teach truth. All of that is up there in one document, as well as a very comprehensive book and documentary list, uh, curated by Miss Kanita, the librarian, is the now coined name. Um,
Yes. I love
so
that. Kanita, the librarian. And I want you to know that book list, if you are watching on Facebook or uh, um, LinkedIn, or some, just anywhere else other than YouTube, you probably don't have the book list. Please go to YouTube and get the book list because it is actually in the comment section.
We've updated it since you had it last. There was
Okay.
I had to go. I mean, I worked on it yesterday for many hours, and then I was like, I had to take a break. But then there was like some stuff I had to add, and then even today I add stuff to the chat that's not on the list. But seriously, like, read.
Yeah, let's read it. Wait a minute, those are some good final words.
Can I say one last thing?
Well, actually, I was about to ask you, what are your last comments? What are your words?
So I would love to see you, Coach Love, do like a series. My parents are 80 and 81. They lived segregation. They taught in segregated schools, and then they taught in integrated schools. And they have some very, very enlightening points about what has happened in the breakdown and the importance of why we should be really teaching our children. And so that's
Your mom and dad coming.
They could, but they can articulate, I think, in a better way because they lived that experience, and they talk about the gap that they see now because of the lack of being able to be hands-on. I'm kind of afraid to say to the young man, pull up your pants, because I know he's bigger than I am. Whereas when they were growing up, it was understood, boy, pull up your pants. That's it, kind of. And so I think that would really, from this discussion, I think that would really be good, because then that could probably help us see what's going on in our educational system, especially when it comes to children that look like us.
I think that's really important, Angelica, and I think it would also be good to maybe have folks who integrated schools along with their parents to be part of that discussion, just to kind of see what happened with that generation, both from the teacher's perspective and the student perspective, because I think that's super important.
Yeah. All right. As you can see, guys, there is more to come. There is more to come. I thank everyone for listening, all of my audience members. But oh my goodness, I thank my panelists, brilliant women who have studied the subject. Kayla, what are your last words, dear? Since you brought us all together, what are your last words?
Well, my last words are, it's time to really take action. So again, in that link that should be passed around, there is a petition within it. It's titled Take the Pledge. That's Take the Pledge to Teach the Truth. Also, we have the African American Policy Forum, their website listed, so you can continue to get more information from them and the actions that they are taking, as well as the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute website is up there. So the next steps are to mobilize and take action, and that's really my final words.
Okay, and so I just want to be clear, there's interest in the PowerPoint. Who is putting the PowerPoint on YouTube? Where's that coming from?
We didn't do a PowerPoint, but we do have a reading list. So
there's a reading list.
Yes, there's a reading list, and there's also a resource list. So there's no PowerPoint because we didn't present a PowerPoint, but we do have a list of resources that will be provided. I also want to, in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer, quote Fannie Lou Hamer. Okay? This is a direct quote from one of the resources on the list. And she said, "I don't want equal rights with the white man. If I did, I'd be a thief and a murderer." Okay. Now that's what she said.
All right. Well, this is what I'm going to say. Family, somebody going to do y'all PowerPoint. I'm getting y'all. I'm going to get somebody to do a PowerPoint, even if it's just to make some quick summations of what was said here. It was really valuable what was said. You guys are so smart, beautiful women, and I am very thankful to have been in your company this evening, and I appreciate you, audience, for all that you have added. It has been an amazing journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.